Welcome back, my friends, to the Chosen's Harmony of the Gospels. We're reading through all the Gospels in chronological order. We are on day 9, part 2, A New Way of Thinking. A new way of thinking. You have heard that it was said to our ancestors, "Do not murder. And whoever murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment." That's hard because I get angry with people, don't you? Whoever insults his brother or sister will be subject to the court. Whoever says, "You fool," will be subject to hell fire. So if you are offering your gift on the altar, and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave the gift in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come offer your gift. Reach a settlement quickly with your adversary while you're on the way with him to the court, or your adversary will hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out of there until you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, "Do not commit adultery." But I tell you, everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. It was also said, "Whoever divorces his wife must give her a written notice of divorce." But I tell you, everyone who divorces his wife, except in a case of sexual immorality, causes her to commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to our ancestors, "You must not break your oath, but you must keep your oaths to the Lord." But I tell you, don't take an oath at all, either by heaven, because it is God's throne, or by the earth, because it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great King. Do not swear by your head, because you cannot make a single hair white or black. But let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Anything more than this is from the evil one. You have heard that it was said, "An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth." But I tell you, don't resist an evildoer. On the contrary, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. As for the one who wants to sue you and take away your shirt, let him have your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to the one who asks you, and don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, "Love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward will you have? Don't even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what are you doing out of the ordinary? Don't even the Gentiles do the same? And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do what is good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he is gracious to the ungrateful and evil. Be merciful, just as your Father is also merciful. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father in heaven. So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be applauded by the people. Truly, I tell you, they have their reward. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Wow, there's a lot in there with the new way of thinking. Let's go back and read a couple things. First of all, this part talking about how we shouldn't be angry with our brothers. And then if you are offering a gift on the altar and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. And of course, these days, we're not going to the temple and laying our offering up there on the altar. But it's just saying that, if you think you have something against someone, that we should just go quickly. Don't let it just settle. And I know I've done that sometimes. I've just let things stew and go on. And does it get better? No, it never does. It always gets worse. So it's better just to forgive. And a lot of times I've learned too, you know what? I'm going to forgive people even if it was their fault. And even if they just keep bringing things up or whatever, or keep doing things wrong. He says just turn the other cheek to those people and just be gracious and be forgiving. Because a lot of times when you just stop and forgive, then it just kind of settles the whole thing and it just kind of goes down and turns into nothing. So I encourage you today to be quick to forgive. And if you think somebody has something against you, try to go settle it right away because it's just better for both of you. And then this is a great part. You have heard that it is said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, don't resist an evildoer. And then he goes on to say, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go 2 miles with him. And that's something that right there they showed in The Chosen. And that's just kind of an old saying. We always say, oh, go the extra mile. Well, that comes from back in the days there, a Roman soldier could ask you as a Jewish person or any person to carry their equipment for them 1 mile. And there were mile markers along the road. And so you couldn't say no. You had to put your bag down, carry their bags or whatever they had and drag them along and walk a mile. And so Jesus was saying, you know what? When you get to that mile marker, say, I'll go another mile. Just go the 2nd mile. And a lot of times the soldiers would be like, oh my gosh, why are you going the extra mile, for you? And because they just were showing love like Jesus did and trying to be different. And so it is a new way of thinking. So if somebody asks for something, just go that extra mile for them. You'll really bless them and you'll kind of get them wondering too, like, what's going on? And that's a good way to say, you know what? This is what Jesus, my teacher, has taught me, to always go that extra mile. And then the final thing here, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. That's much easier said than done, right? Because sometimes you have neighbors that are a little crazy, right? Or people at work, they can be like your neighbor at work and stuff too. But he's saying that we should love these people, right? So the Jewish people used to say, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But Jesus is saying that we should love all people, especially our enemy. And sometimes your neighbor can be the enemy, right? Sometimes we all have crazy neighbors, but basically we're just supposed to be loving everyone, And I just think about that saying a lot of times that hurt people. And so, if someone's really mean to you, maybe there's a reason why that really has nothing even to do with you. So it just helps to show love to people. And again, kind of just diffuse all those situations. And Jesus calls us to love. That's one of his, the first command is to love God with all your heart and soul. And the second command is like it. Love your neighbor. How? As yourself. I know you all love yourselves out there. I love myself. So we need to love our neighbors and our enemies as ourselves, which can be hard to do. But if we do it, we're going to make the world a much better place. And then he talks about not bragging. When you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet like the hypocrites do, but just give and don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And so what it means with that, with the left hand and the right hand, is that, we should just kind of give and not really know, the other part of us, what we're doing, and not to be bragging about it, basically. And back then, they would bring in big bags of coins. Like they could have brought in maybe some paper money, which would be quiet, but there was these big horns that would go down to the little offering box, and they would throw money in, and the money would spin around and go in there and clink and clink and clink. And, the poor people would come in and little plink, plink, that's all they could do. And they would just make a big show of their money. And it's like, God doesn't want that. I mean, if you choose to tithe, which our family has always tithed, which I think is a good thing, giving 10%, just do it quietly. You don't need to be bragging to everybody how much you gave. And really what God wants is a percentage. I know some people think, well, I'm kind of poor, I don't have a lot of money, but it doesn't matter. He expects more from the rich people. And if you don't have a lot, God knows that, but he still wants you to give with a joyful heart and to give as much as you can, hopefully 10%, and then also not to do it in a boasting way. He's really more concerned about our attitude, how we give, than so much how much we give. So I hope you enjoy flipping all those around, loving your enemy and just turning the cheek to other people and just not bragging with your money and all that. And it's just a really interesting way to live when you live like a Christian. But you know what? The world notices. They kind of notice. I've worked at places where I've never said anything about Jesus. I'm just there for, a week or so, and people are just kind of like, are you a Christian? Just because, how I say or how I help, or just little things that I would say, or the fact that I'm not cussing, things like that. And so the world is watching. So it's important to be shining our light and living for Him. And I hope you just feel empowered by these verses today to go out there and live for Him. Shine your light, turn the other cheek, and come back tomorrow for some more great words from the Gospels of Jesus. See you then. You can get your own copy of A Blended Harmony of the Gospels by The Chosen simply by going to thechosengifts.com. There you can find all kinds of wonderful merchandise to help build your faith this year. Be sure to check out their devotionals and their Bible studies. Have a blessed day.